Hello to all my starseeds and wayshores and empaths and grid workers. I just wanted to come on here to talk about how the third dimension, 3D Earth, is an experiment, okay? And then the 5D New Earth is an experience. So they're completely different. The 3D Earth is Mother Earth's old planetary body, the one that we resided in. And the 3D Earth was deeply imprinted with a lot of mental programming, a lot of limiting beliefs, a lot of all the stuff that kept us anchored in a lower timeline. And so it's an experiment in that we're all like these rats running around within this laboratory. And then when we have an awakening, we start to diverge from the norm because we can see with our spiritual vision, we can see with our spiritual sight. And so when you start to awaken to the truth of who you are, you're able to see that this is all just a psychological experiment. All right? So when you're looking from your fifth dimensional self down into the third dimensional self, from the overview, then you can clearly see that this is just a simulation, it's an interactive video game, and it was all set up to see if you would eventually retrace to the totality of who you are. Okay? Now, the 3D experiment consisted of us being programmed, so us running our human selves, the ego, the monkey mind, and everything that we held as a limitation was transmitted outwardly or projected onto this movie screen as our reality. And we would get triggered by people because those triggers would show us where we're still programmed. And then we slowly but surely started to delete them or erase them and replace them with something of a higher nature. So the 3D program, where a lot of people are still very caught, are run or governed by programs, thoughts, limiting perceptions, limiting beliefs, and everything that they experience is really just part of the illusion, because these programs are elusive. So everything that they experience, which is seemingly so real to them, is actually just an experiment. And when I say them, I'm not trying to be degrading or anything. I'm just saying I was once at that level too, where I couldn't see anything, and everything felt so real, and it wasn't. It was just the self-imposed or the genetically inherited programs or patterns that I inherited from my ancestors that kept me seeing life through a distorted lens, through a yellow lens, if you will. And then when you awaken, the lens gets removed, and then you can see from the neutral standpoint with a clear lens, with a universal lens, and you can see how both polarities were needed to keep this game alive, to keep the experiment alive. The 5D New Earth is a completely different existence because it is an experience, meaning you've already transcended the program or the experiment, and you're now that beautiful being. You're not a rat. If anything, you're like an angelic that's diverged from the norm, and you can see everything very crisp and clear. And that's when you really get to enjoy life, because you're not tethered to those old fears or to those old unconscious programs. You can see everything. Now, you may still have a few leaks here and there, or a few spills here and there, which is totally normal, because a lot of us are still navigating within the fourth dimensional realm, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the 5D is a vibrational space. It's like a pocket that you find within yourself, where you're not escaping the world. You've actually become the embodiment of all that you are. You're not falling prey to lies anymore, or you're not believing anything that is trying to dim your light down or dim your shine. And you can see right through everything. And that's when you attain a fifth dimensional consciousness, that's when you can see that you were never broken. You only think you're broken when you're still caught in the illusion. But when you transcend the illusion of the 3D Earth reality, and you start to shift yourself into the fifth dimensional New Earth reality, you can in fact see that there was never anything wrong with you, and that you were just simply deeply instilled with programs and that you needed to remove, that you needed to eradicate. But from the 5D standpoint, you can see that you were never broken. You only feel broken when you're still swimming in that ocean of drama and trauma and chaos and disharmony. So a lot of people say to me, well, what does the 4D mean? Well, the 4D is almost like the rainbow bridge. Some people call it the rainbow bridge, or you can call it the gateway to the fifth dimension, or that space, the astral realm, which is the reality between the third dimension and fifth dimension. So how I personally view it is like this, and this is a vision I got when I first awakened. When I awakened, it was very abrupt because it was the Kundalini and it went straight up to my third eye, and then it's been awake since 2011. So I have an active Kundalini serpent energy moving in my body. Usually not so much in the daytime for some reason. I think it's just because we all do a lot of traveling when we sleep. But usually around 4 or 5 p.m., the second that I take time to consciously connect to my breath, whoop, it starts to raise. But the Kundalini is responsible for opening up your third eye and your spiritual side. So for me, I very much felt like the closest thing to a walk-in, where I had my Kundalini experience and I did not feel like the same person again. It was like a higher consciousness entered my body, which could just be a higher aspect of who I am, or it could have just been another being that swapped into my body. It's all good because it was an agreement that was made upon, and I changed instantaneously, and then obviously I had to kind of clean up all of the stuff that the old Phil did, but I did it from this new perspective. But the vision I got when I first had my Kundalini, because I really did get flooded with so many prophetic visions, even that first night and the second day and the third day, like from the get-go, a lot of what I share now is very much relevant to what I saw in 2011. But the 4D is almost like you've awakened spiritually, but you're a blind man or a blind woman in an unknown dimension. That's how I see the 4D. So the 4D is a place where everything exists. Fairies, rainbows, unicorns, or I should, rainbows do exist here, but unicorns, flying cobras, dragons who spit blue fire. The astral realm is anything that's ever been imagined dwells within the astral realm. And why are we blind when we first awaken within this realm? Because we have to start to develop our sense of discernment. So when I first used to meditate with my Kundalini, the Kundalini is very magnetic, so I knew that there were a lot of spirits attaching to me, good and bad, even though there's no such thing as good and bad. But there were all these beings within the astral realm that had probably always been attached to me, but now I could actually sense them because I had tipped over into lucidity, into the awakened state. So in 3D, we have all these entities attached to us, but because we're so caught in the illusion, we say that we're broken, we say that we cry a lot, or we complain a lot. Well, that's actually entities that are attached to you. When you awaken and you start to know how to send yourself into an altered state of consciousness, there will be all kinds of entities that attach onto you, but you can't see them yet. You don't really understand them yet because you're a newbie, You're like the newcomer. You're the new kid in school. And now you've reached a new level, and everyone in that level is already very versed. They're already very skilled in what they do. But it's all necessary because that's how you start to discern who you want to work with, which guides you want to align with, where you want to form your alliances, and so on and so on. So from that respect, nothing is good or bad. It's really just a sector in space that we enter to develop discernment, to also play with our imagination, because the imagination is truly crucial. It's really important that we unlock our imagination, because our imagination can draw in energy from the astral realm, from different guides, from different archetypes, and you're pulling in those different essences to further expand. So the 4D is not somewhere where we want to live forever, but it's almost like the bridge between the 3D and the 5D. It's a place where you get to develop your abilities. It's like a big spiritual training ground or a big playground. and you get to know different beings. Like, you get to work with cobras and dragons and fairies, and with the archangels. You get to work with elementals. You get to work with Merlin. You get to work with all these amazing guides, all for the purpose of developing an acute sense of discernment. And as you begin to integrate these energies and you become more and more embodied, then you start to become initiated into guardianship of New Earth, meaning that you're now assigned the position of being a guardian of the 5D New Earth reality. Okay? So someone can be awakened, but then I'll give you an example. You can be awakened, but if someone says something to you that you feel is a lie, but you don't say anything and you don't call it out, then you're awakened, but you didn't speak up. You let that energy kind of slide past you. So that would be more of a 4D presentation. And then in the 4D, it's almost like the 3D is tugging at your strings, and then the 5D is tugging at your strings. And there's almost like this tug of war. It's the spiritual warfare zone. So it's like these angels and these demons and these angels and these demons that are constantly tugging at you to get you to decide which one you're going to commit to. Are you going to commit to living in your truth, to embodying your power? Are you going to commit to no longer making an agreement with lack? So in the 4D, you get to explore all these different nuances or these different hues, which is really important because that's where you really strengthen yourself. When I first awakened, I would be around people and everything was like an overload of sensory perception. So I could feel all these energies, but I didn't really understand them. I couldn't really decipher the messages yet. So a lot of times I wouldn't say anything. And eventually I realized, those were my guides sharing information about the person or about myself, and I needed to just speak. When you become embodied, you have no problem speaking your truth because you're no longer tethered to the 3D or the 4D. Okay? Which means that you can spiral in and out of different groups like the cobras or the Merlins or the fairies, but you don't get trapped in them. A lot of people, like the best example I can give you is I see a lot of people who awaken, and then they're like, I found Jesus, Jesus is the way. And every day they get on YouTube to try to impose upon you that Jesus is the only way and that homosexuality is condemned and all this. That is a parasitic attachment, because Jesus would never want someone to promote Jesus, or like the right way to say it is Jesus would never want that person to get on camera to serve themselves and say like, I found myself in homosexuality is bad. That's filled with limitations and judgment. If anything, if you did channel Jesus, Jesus would probably tell you to just be the beacon of love and light that you are. That you don't need to make it about you, right? It's like you're sharing information to be of service to people, but they don't necessarily need to know all the private details of your operation. That's an example of someone awakening, being a blind man or a blind woman in the astral, and then an entity grabs hold of you and disguises themselves as Jesus, and then you're going around, trying to evangelize. Another viewpoint, which just came to me because I always want to make sure that I cover my grounds, another viewpoint is that it is Jesus that comes to you, but because you haven't fully cleared those third dimensional energies within your body, your ego grabs onto that and it's like, ooh, I'm Jesus now, or I channeled Jesus, or I'm the reincarnated version of Michelangelo, or I was Einstein in another life. Yes, you could be channeling Einstein's energy, right? But some people get so caught in they start to overly identify with something and as something. That's when there's a parasite that's attached. And I've seen people like that even on my Facebook. I don't say anything because I understand how difficult it can be to navigate that terrain when you first wake up. So there is one person on my Facebook that's gay, and that's been telling everyone like, gay is horrible, you shouldn't do that, give your life to Jesus. And they're constantly going on there preaching, but they're not really, it's not so much that they're preaching and giving like valuable information that people can actually implement. they're mostly talking about how joyful they feel and how blissful they feel all the time. That's self-serving. That's not serving the individual. Spirituality is about being of service to others through being of service to your higher self. So I consider myself to be serving my higher self, meaning I meditate all the time, but it's all my heart is directed to my higher self and to people as well. So it's all about what your intention is. Are you coming from a place of oneness, or are you coming from a place of being self-indulged or self-absorbed? And this particular person says things like, I found myself, I'm so joyful now. I look at, and they post like befores and afters, and that's all very self-serving in a way. I'm not saying befores and afters aren't good. Like, it's great if you have an extreme makeover and you want to celebrate that, but you obviously don't want to dwell on that the rest of your life. You know, you want to keep moving up and moving up and moving up, and kind of like, I hate using words like up because it sounds like so linear, but that's the idea. You want to keep, you learn something and you discard it. All right, next, let's go. You never get too fixated or too attached to what you're learning, because then you're no longer a student. You think you know it all, and that's not what we're here to do. So, and even with this person on my Facebook, I haven't said anything, and I'm seeing so many people judge him, and I can feel compassion towards him because they're acting no different than he's acting. Or, you know, I'm sure it was hard for him to come out of the closet when he did come out of the closet. And whether or not he's still gay, that's, you know, I don't have a judgment, because I do believe that there can be walk-ins. Maybe there's a completely different spirit that's jumped into his body and that isn't gay. You know, like, who am I to say whether or not he's gay? But a lot of the people on there are making smug remarks like, dude, you're gay. Like, you gave me a blowjob, you know? And I don't think that's okay, because then they're just playing the opposite side of the coin, which is still duality. And I'm sure that when he was gay, it was hard for him to come out. And a lot of people were like, you know, being mean to him or insulting or whatever. And it's not okay to do that to someone if you don't want that to be done to you. So it doesn't matter what people believe in. So in a funny way, I can see how he's acting as a catalyst for those people to remove their judgments and to stop engaging, because if they're engaging, that's a part of their reality. And there's something within them that he's triggering, okay? Instead, just let him be, let him go through his journey. But most people don't have that capacity yet. They don't have that wherewithal to let people be. And that's why the saying, live and let live, is so very important, right? But anyways, I'm going a little off topic right now. The 4D is the bridge. So for that guy, you know, he may eventually realize, oh my God, like, I've been self-serving, and then he's going to learn how to navigate that terrain and see how, like, the 3D programs can still hijack you when you're in the 4D and convince you that you're an angel, or that you're Jesus, or that you're Buddha reincarnated. And so the 4D is the spiritual boot camp where we really get to dissect all these different frequencies and discern what it is that we want to work with and what it is that we don't want to align with. So the 4D is the bridge. And a lot of humanity right now is in the 4th density consciousness, and they're still, you know, going back to old ways, and then having a really good day where they feel bliss, and then another bad day, which is normal, you guys. You know, it's like that for all of us. We're all gonna have days where those old 3D programs lure us in, you know, and then we get back on our game and we get back into alignment. The key is to remove all the judgment, because we tend to judge ourselves and be so harsh with ourselves sometimes. That's the most important thing. But yeah, once you transcend the experiment, which is the 3D programming that had you enslaved, that had you entrapped, where you were manifesting by default as opposed to manifesting through your own volition, through your own will, through your own intentionality. When we manifest by default, we're manifesting unconsciously. So someone might create drama, not understanding why they're creating it, but they're still manifesting it by default, because there are programs that have distorted their perception on life, and they get angry with people, and they might, you know, wreak havoc sometimes, and they're still creating, but they're creating by default. those programs are running the show from behind the scenes. Once you awaken and you can see through all of that, and you start to, sorry, my screen went off, and you start to see through all those illusions, the filters get eliminated. So you're not seeing with the filters anymore. You're seeing from a neutral standpoint, and you are holding yourself responsible for everything that you're creating as a creator or co-creator of your life. That's, I think, the chief component of moving into 5D once you've awakened, because once you awaken, you still have to clean house. You can't just be like, oh, I have a debt and I'm not going to pay for it. Like, if you stack on credit card debt, you are responsible for that debt and for everything that you accrued in your sleep state, but you still have to pay that debt off. So when we awaken, we're in the 4D, and our spiritual sight starts to open, and we can see where we might have manipulated people, or where we might have, aired our dirty laundry when we shouldn't have, when we should have kept things to ourselves, or when we, complained or played the victim, whatever it is, right? We start to see everything. But the most important thing is to hold ourselves accountable for everything that we created, even when we were unconscious. Where we're like, all right, well, this is the debt that I've piled upon, and I'm now going to get rid of this debt by doing things in an honest way, in a just way, in a conscious way. That's how you start to move into 5D, because you're connecting into your heart. Ooh, this just came to me. So the 3D is very mind-driven, because you really can't be possessed by entities if you're in your heart. If you're in that frequency of oneness, you cannot be possessed by entities, because you're soulful. You're not soulless. The 3D uses the mind as a device to influence you into making decisions through impulse, or through the urge, or through temptation or lust and all these things, to keep you enslaved. So the 3D is mind driven. The 5D is the heart frequency coupled with your third eye. I don't see it as just heart, because you can have an open heart and then someone takes advantage of you and you keep forgiving them over and over again. That would be more of a 4D presentation. I hope that makes sense. So if you're someone who has an open heart, you've awakened, you want to love everyone, but then everyone's taking advantage of you, you're still in 4D, because you're not able to see through that someone is trying to take advantage of you. So the 5D would be like, I'm connected to my heart, but my third eye is wide open. They work together. They really do. They work in tandem. They create an entire energetic field, your heart and your third eye. And if someone is trying to take advantage of you, your third eye is going to see it. It's going to let you know. So you're receiving that intel. And from a place of love, you say, no, I'm not welcoming this into my reality. And you're acting as a guardian of New Earth, because you now have a new body as well. New Earth's body is the same thing as your fifth dimensional body. Old Earth's body is the same as your old unconscious body. But old Earth got abused so much. We did abuse her when we were unconscious, by the way. But old Earth got abused so much that she's not going to let you abuse her anymore. She's taken her power back, and she's now lifted herself into the higher timelines, as have we. So, when we were unconscious, we abused ourselves, we abused other people, we abused Earth, and then we awaken and we're like, wow, we need to clean up this mess. And we start having more respect for ourselves, for the planet, for people, and we don't let people, drive all over us like we're a speed bump anymore. So, just like, think of Earth as you. She's our mother, but she is us. She was patient with us because she knew we'd eventually awaken. And in many ways, we need to be patient with the people who are not yet awake or are just awakening, because we have to epitomize Mother Earth. We have to be the epitome of unity, consciousness, and love. So yeah, I'm trying to think if I had anything else. Because I can talk all day, you guys. I really can. But the old Earth got abused. People took advantage of her. People complained a lot. That's all like not having gratitude for the home that she's providing for us. Like she's housing us. So whenever we abused her, she took it and she took and she took and she took, just like we did when we were asleep. And then eventually you just go, wow. And you awaken and you're like, I'm no longer going to accept less. I'm no longer going to tolerate this disrespect. And you bring your power back in and you say, never again. And that's what New Earth did. And that's what we did as her new stewards, as her new guardians. Because we were abused. We were taken advantage of. I mean, think about it. You're told a lie your entire life. Your entire life, you're told a lie, which you probably set up. I'm not saying you didn't set it up pre-birth. I am saying that you did formulate your reality before you were born. But just stick with me for a second. You're told a lie your whole life. You know, you believe your parents, you believe all these things that are very limiting in nature. And of course, when you awaken, you go, oh my God, this was all an illusion. It was all a game. And you're like, I'm never letting these lies in again. Like, I see now. I can see. I was blind, but now I see. Like, so New Earth is the same way. She will never allow third dimensional energies or lower fourth dimensional energies enter her new body. She will not allow it because she's already been through that. She's awakened. We've awakened, and we're all on a path of ascension. So that's my message today. 3D, very mind-driven, governed by entities, parasitic thoughts that run the show, that rule your kingdom. It's a very linear reality. So the 3D is like, hey, when is this going to happen for me? Or where am I going to meet my soulmate? That's a linear question. That's a 3D mentality when you're rooted in a linear reality. And then the 4D is that place in the middle where the 3D is still tugging at you and the 5D is like saying, come over here, just commit to it, release that fear, it's not real, and you're having to sift through all these different energies. And then the 5D is when you become embodied, you become one with all that is, you become one with your higher self, and you no longer allow in energies that are trying to seep into your new body, just like Earth's new body, and you're very vigilant when it comes to your thoughts and all of this. Like you can see pretty much everything, and you love yourself so much that you don't let things in. And New Earth needs us, her children, her new inhabitants, her ascended inhabitants, to be stationed everywhere so that we could be those gatekeepers. You know, it's kind of like borders between countries. Like we're kind of like we're kind of like her guardians in that respect, or the gatekeepers of New Earth. So I hope that helps you guys, and I love reading all of your comments. I appreciate you all. And yes, please subscribe, please share if you can, and if not, I love you anyway, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.